And Yashvardhan Sinha, who is a former Indian ambassador to Venezuela, is joining us on this story. Hello, sir. A very warm welcome to DD India News. To begin with, sir, I want to ask that till when were you there in Venezuela?
I was there from 2007 to 2009 when President Chavez was the president and Mr. Nicolas Maduro was the foreign minister.
Okay. How do you analyze the equation with of Venezuela with the United States when you were there? How do you assess that situation during that time?
It has always been a troubled relationship because in the past 30-35 years ago, before President Chavez came to power, the Venezuela was very much ruled by a pro-American government. Now, when I use the word pro and anti, it has to be qualified because what has happened is that the American oil companies basically invested in Venezuela and control the production of oil. As you're aware, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. So what President Chavez did, because President Chavez was elected on a mandate, on a socialist mandate, because Venezuela, the have-nots were very poor and the few haves controlled the economy. And American companies had invested, American companies sold oil, and the national oil company of Venezuela, PDVSA, was basically controlled by these companies. And what President Chavez did was he nationalized PDVSA, which is the national oil company of Venezuela. And that led to friction, naturally. And a lot of the American companies, not all, but a large number of American and European companies, oil companies that were there, they left. And as a result, the infrastructure, there were the maintenance, etc., because then sanctions kicked in after some time. And Venezuela, despite having the largest oil reserves, was not able to produce enough oil to export. So as a result, obviously the Americans were unhappy with socialist form of government under Chavez, but Chavez was very charismatic. It was very difficult. And they did try. They did try to remove Chavez in a coup that didn't succeed. So it's only after that Chavez passed away, I think it was 2013, if I'm not mistaken, and President Maduro assumed. But President Maduro obviously doesn't have the sort of charisma that Chavez had. And we know what happened in the last elections in 2024 when obviously it was stolen from the opposition candidate because he had won handsomely and the results manipulated and Maduro declared victor. So it's a full cycle you can see the full cycle taking place with Chavez coming in the 90s and then now Maduro, his chosen successor, being removed in the manner that he was. For a lack of a better word, he was abducted, kidnapped, rendition, whatever term you use. The fact that he was removed forcibly from not only from office but from his own country.
Okay. Ambassador, I want to ask you one simple question. That can the operation of such scale take place without the support of people from within the country?
So, I see the CIA was operating in Venezuela. They had the green signal. President Trump had authorized that. So, there was covert action happening. Now, when covert action happens, covert action is supported obviously by people on the ground. And I don't know, but I won't be surprised if someone higher up, or not just one person, but more than one person close to Maduro was on the payroll of the Americans, because such a precise attack and intelligence, etc., to get such precise intelligence, I presume President Maduro was not I know the Miraflores Palace, the presidential palace, he was not there. He was in a military facility under heavy guard. But obviously the Americans knew. Now, whether it was technical intelligence, and I doubt whether it would be technical intelligence only. Technical intelligence certainly, but supplemented by human from the ground, on the ground. So all that we don't know really, we can only speculate. But the fact of the matter is that the suddenness of the attack, as it caught people unaware, and I think though the Americans had put enough pressure, they had a military, a naval armada in the Caribbean Sea backed by the largest aircraft carrier. So I think the removal of or regime change or removal of Maduro was inevitable. But how it happened at the particular evening, the night rather, when it happened early hours of the morning, is something obviously that nobody could predict, and certainly not Maduro, because his military seems to have been caught napping. They were neutralized, their radars and whatever else they had.
Yeah, and a lot of credit also goes to the technology which America has. The Aegis radar system, you have the, the technology which America currently has. It's the best in the world. Sir, I want to ask you that you just mentioned a word, regime change. We all know what was in the mind of Donald Trump since the time he took over as the President of the United States. Since its first term, Venezuela was on his agenda. Now, I want to ask you, sir, that why is Trump looking at a regime change in a country which doesn't even pose serious security challenges to the United States of America? What is there behind? What is Trump thinking? What is the strategy which the America is following right now?
Well, I think all I can do is to point you towards President Trump's press conference or briefing last night. And it was very clear what the agenda was. And I had said it on another channel, and if I can paraphrase in Americanese, if I can put it that way, American English, it's the oil, stupid. They're after the oil. It's very, very clear, because President Trump has also said that he wants that the US will run the country.
So is it just oil, sir? Is it just oil? Because they also have vast reserves of liquid gold.
It could be liquid gold, but oil is the gold that they need. And all the refineries, not all, but a large number of refineries in southern United States, in Louisiana, in Texas, were geared traditionally to processing heavy crude from Venezuela. 50% or even more of Venezuela's oil, even when I was there, even during Chavez's time, used to go to the United States. So I think oil was obviously the first motive. There may be others. Venezuela is not a small country. It's a resource-rich country. And right on the Caribbean Sea, located very strategically, the northern sort of tip of the South American continent. And I think traditionally always been an ally of the United States. The United States controlled what happened in Venezuela. It's only the last 25 odd years that that is not happening. So I think President Trump made it very clear that that America they invested in this is our oil. He called Venezuelan oil our oil.
Yeah, exactly. He said that during the press conference yesterday, he said that Venezuela has stole United States oil. Apart from that, sir, there are some reactions coming in from...
Quite bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly my point. But you've correctly mentioned it that Venezuela has one of the largest reserves of crude oil in the world. But the problem with them... The largest, in fact. Okay. But the problem with them is that they can't take out that oil because it requires a lot of money. It requires a lot of technology, which when sanctions kicked in, further troubled Venezuela. Now, there are reactions coming in from different countries. There are world leaders who are reacting on the capture of Nicolas Maduro. Some are saying that's right. Some are saying that's wrong. China is saying that it's wrong. And they, according to some reports, have asked for the immediate release of Nicolas Maduro. Is it because that China has invested a lot in Latin America?
No, you see, we have to see it in context. A large number of countries, particularly China and even India, was buying Venezuelan crude. When I was posted in Venezuela, Reliance was buying almost 150,000 barrels a day.
Okay.
2007, 2008. The former SR group, the Ruyas, they were buying. Now, in India, one, the distance, and the other, our refineries, particularly in the public sector, the PSUs, are not geared to refining heavy crude, or at that time they weren't. So it was the private players like Reliance, which has a huge, the world's biggest refinery in Jamnagar, can refine it, and they were refining it. And I think OVL invested in the Orinoco Belt. You know, the first oil field that OVL got was in 2008, 2007, 2008. It was the San Cristobal. And then after that, they got a much larger oil field, which ExxonMobil had vacated. And of course, they partnered with some other, I think the Petro Brazil and Repsol of Spain, if I remember correctly. And they got the Carabobo oil field. Now, you talked about, investing in technology. It's not that Venezuela didn't have the technology. They certainly, they may have got it from the Americans.
Okay.
But the fact is that the oil is Venezuelan. It's extracted in Venezuela.
Right.
And their national oil company was fully capable of extracting and selling that oil.
Okay.
However, under sanctions, obviously the maintenance of those facilities suffered, and their output as well as their exports decreased drastically. And that is why they were in such a dire economic situation.
Right. You've mentioned one point that when I asked you that what's the actual reason of capturing Nicolas Maduro, you said President Trump is after Venezuela's oil. That's one point, and I'm agreeing to it. The second point is that, is there some sort of insecurity as well with the United States as far as their exports of oil and gas are concerned to the global world?
Not really, because you see the US itself is a major producer of oil. And the shale oil that they produce is not heavy. So the refineries which are geared to refining heavy crude would find it difficult to refine shale oil. Plus, the US is exporting also. So the US is a major player in terms of producing and exporting oil. However, they want to reduce their reliance on, say, the West, on the Gulf, the Arabian Persian Gulf countries. And what better way than to, right on your neighborhood, you have a country which has the reserves of 303 billion barrels. Why not use that oil, which they traditionally did use? And even under Chavez, as I said, they were buying oil from Venezuela, but their production, the output in Venezuela reduced because of sanctions. So I think it's not, and the other reason which they mention is drug trafficking, narco-terrorism. Now, these things will obviously be judged by a court of law in New York. However, one thing is quite clear, that Mexico and Colombia, because Venezuela doesn't produce much fentanyl, so it's actually the route is through Mexico and at Colombia, not really Venezuela. But we will have to wait and see what evidence the prosecution produces in terms of Maduro and his wife Celia Flores' involvement in narco-terrorism and drug trafficking.
Definitely. Sir, I think whatever you just said, the United States has not been able to provide any evidence of the fact that Venezuela, transfers drug to the United States. There is no concrete proof as of now, as far as I believe. But sir, what do you think about the 1823 Monroe doctrines, which President Trump said it as Monroe doctrines now? He has mentioned in his address also yesterday in his presser.
See, the Monroe doctrine was basically a reiteration of exceptionalism.
It seems like it has become an essential. President Trump is now making the Monroe doctrine as the essential part of America's foreign policy, isn't it?
He's gone beyond. He's termed it Monroe.
Yeah, exactly what I said. Exactly what I said.
This is gunboat diplomacy of a bygone era, where you could invade Grenada or topple a government in Chile. The Latin America has been exposed to this sort of action traditionally by the United States. So I think the United States views that whole area as their sphere of influence. They call it the Western Hemisphere, but it's the Americas basically. And if you remember, when the Soviets had tried to put missiles in Cuba, you had the missile crisis in the early 60s when President Kennedy was the president. So this time around, I think there was no such crisis. There were no missiles pointing at the United States. There was no threat as such in terms of military threat from any of these countries. However, I think the President Trump has decided that there was enough provocation in terms of what he termed narco-terrorism and drug trafficking. And of course, also the elections that he supposedly stole from the opposition candidate, Maduro. So all that combined and resulted in them deciding to go in. But I would like to go back to what I said earlier. It is the oil. That is the main reason.
Okay, the oil, which is the gold there in Venezuela. All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining in on DD India News. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful having conversation with you.